Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, Hashem Rakah. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the GMS who rule well, and also honor and salutations to those of you who are of the hopeful elect that are out there teaching the word of sincerity and truth. Alright, so I just wanted to do another card talk and share something that I've been thinking about. I was thinking about it for a while. I still really can't think of a way to do a show on it where I can really get into it. So I just figure I make it a card talk, share my thoughts, and hopefully it's edifying. So I was getting into the history of the Roman Caesars, starting from Julius to Augustus and Tiberius and so forth and so on. And I was getting into the history of that. So with that, I listened to a couple documentaries. I read up on some things, and one thing that had stood out to me in the documentary. One of the documentaries that I had watched was here it is. You got these Edomites, these so-called historians, talking about their forefathers essentially. And, they're talking about people in culture that this current people in culture, as far as the so-called white man goes, model themselves after. And one of the historians said that the Roman Caesars, especially after Tiberius, when you get into Nero and Otho and those Caesars that ruled in 1 year, I forget exactly I think it was 4 of them. But when you get into all of these Caesars and how they lived their life, one thing he said was that they were more interested in the seat of power than they were in, actually ruling the people. They were more into having the title than they were actually having the tenets and skill and wherewithal and mental capacity to actually rule, right? And I said, what is that? What is that mentality where you're only concerned about the seat and not the actual ruler, right? So I listened to this morning, and this one was said, that's perfect. Now I can put those two things together and talk about them together. I was listening to the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I've read the book. Personally, I recommend the book. That's just my personal opinion. It's a good read, but Malcolm X was into some other things religiously. So if you can't stomach that, then I wouldn't recommend you read it. But it's a good read on just a man level and how you should be. The thing that stuck out to me was how studious he was, right, and how he was a stickler for his time. And so those two things, and also how he felt about women. So those three things are things I think that any man can learn from. His point of view on those things. So I was listening to it this morning on my walk, and you had he was telling at the beginning of the story. He tells of how his father was. He was into that Pan-Africanism with Marcus Garvey, and he went around. Though he was a Baptist preacher, he went around speaking that so-called black people should go back to Africa. And because of his mentality, because of his take and where he lived, you had a lot of those white Klansmen fucking with him in so many words, right? And he said there was one situation where, and you can see it in the movie if you've ever watched the Malcolm X movie, where these Edomites, these Klansmen, had burned down the house that they lived in, and his father took his pistol and was shooting at him. Right now, as he tells the story, he says he remembers them, the white men running away. So I took those two things, right? You have the inability to rule when you think about the Roman Caesars, and then you think about the Ku Klux Klan and how they were a feared group, right? But they themselves were afraid, right? How is it that you have the seat, right? You have the power, you have the privilege to persecute a people with no fear of consequence, right? But you hide and you cover yourself up, and through those two things, I say, you know what? The so-called white man, he's a coward, man. He's a coward. He's unaccountable, right? He hides behind a visage, right? To become a ruler, you gotta. One thing I learned in this truth is to be a leader or a ruler of any kind, there are certain principles that come with that. And one is a level of servitude, right? The Lord Yahweh Shai, before he sent the apostles out to do anything, he washed their feet, right? He taught them the scriptures and the way of life and how a man in this walk should behave, right? So he took a position of servitude. What did he say? He said, I came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, right? And when you look up the word minister, it's a word that means service or servitude, right? So there's that, and then there's a level of diplomacy that you have to have as a ruler, right? The scriptures say that ask first before you make a judgment, which shows a level of diplomacy, right? To ask questions, to figure out what the scenario was, to hear both sides of the story. Solomon had that in him, right? And he made a great judgment. He made one of the greatest judgments in Israel, a very famed judgment, which was to cut a child in half to find out which mother was telling the truth, right? So Esau don't carry those tenets, man. The Edomites don't carry those tenets. And when you read into those Caesars, they would build like villas and in like a secluded area away from the people. They didn't want the people around them. They didn't want anybody asking them questions. They just wanted to be the ruler. They wanted to have rulership at their beck and call, right? They wanted to be able to get money whenever they wanted to. They wanted to be able to have women and in most cases boys when they wanted to, without anybody saying anything to them. They wanted the fruit of leadership and rulership, but they didn't want to do any of the work, right? And the same thing with the Ku Klux Klan. They wanted the power that came with fear, or the good feeling that came with fear of so-called black people to them. They wanted so-called black people to fear them, but they didn't want to be accountable for it. These were the police officers of the world. These were the firemen of the world, the judges and lawyers and bakers and grocers. These were the people that were behind the Ku Klux Klan. But my thing is, you're in the seat of power. Why not show your face? And they still do it to this day, which with the so-called Illuminati, which that term Illuminati, though that's what they are, has become cliche because people use it so much. It's pop culture now. Everybody knows about it, right? But why hide your intentions? Why hide your agenda? You're in power. Who's going to stop you? The only one that's going to stop you is the Heavenly Father, and you can't hide it from Him. So why not just be bold about it? That's one thing about Edomites, man. They're cowards, man. They don't tell their true intentions. Come out, make a commercial. You can make a commercial and say, here's our agenda. We wanna homosexualize the world, and we wanna destroy the so-called black people, Hispanics, Native Americans, the Israelites, and tell the people we're Israelites. What's going to stop you? The prophecy already tells on you anyway, right? So just be who you are. The son of perdition. You're already being revealed. We taxing that ass, man. You're already being revealed, so come out and say who you are. You know? Take that little hood off. Take that little hood, that little, that white hood, take it off and show your face. We know who you are. It hasn't changed. Alright, so that's it, man. That's what I was thinking. Hopefully that was edifying. I want to give all praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai Bashim Rachah. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS who rule well. Honor and salutations to the whole elect. And with that, I say shalom.